This is a very strange evening for me. I have never before received a Life Achievement Award, and I tremble at the thought that it may mean my life is over or soon to be. My hope is that I will continue to achieve in some small way, but in the meantime, it's very important for me to thank the Hessners, everybody who is here at the conference, all the judges, everybody who participated in this. It's a signal honor for me. It's a terribly, terribly important moment. It's something that'll show up on my resume for the rest of my life and something about which I will bore people to death. I particularly wish I could be there with Yates because there are no bad times with Brock Yates, and I have enjoyed an awful lot of good evenings with him in places here and there, and maybe once or twice in Las Vegas. But I enjoyed myself very much when I spoke to your group last year. It was a very nice occasion. I had a lot of fun. I saw a lot of old friends, and I got to tell some old stories. I'd like to point out that I learned how to do some of the most important things that I do working for Elaine Bond at Road and Track magazine. Elaine was an extraordinarily difficult woman to work for, probably a very difficult woman to live with. She never took care of herself. Her hair was always oily, it was always a mess, and her clothes were always wrinkled. But she had an uncanny knack for running a car magazine. And the ideas that Elaine took into Road and Track magazine are the ideas that I use right now to run a magazine, and I've been running magazines that way ever since 1960 when they fired me. But in those 3 years, she really gave me the basics to do everything I've done in the years since. And at that point, moving on from Road and Track, I went to work for Campbell Ewald. I was hired. They paid me as much money as I'd been making at Road and Track, which was $12,000 a year. And I was enormously relieved to learn that I was going to be making that kind of money. And on my first day, they walked me into my new office, and I would be sharing it with another writer named Elmore Leonard. Elmore was writing Chevrolet truck testimonial ads in those days. And together, we wrote all kinds of Chevrolet stuff, but my specialty was performance cars with special emphasis on Corvette. Elmore taught me a bunch of stuff. He taught me to read all my copy aloud, preferably to somebody. But he also said, if you can't find somebody who'll sit and listen to you, put together an imaginary panel of people you admire. He said, sometimes I've got Jack Kennedy and Ernest Hemingway who'll sit there and listen to my stuff, and I'll read it, and Hemingway will snort and say that it's just more advertising bullshit and nobody's going to pay any attention to it, and Kennedy will be more restrained. But I never used those guys, but I've just beaten my poor wife to death reading all my copy to her all these years, and I'm still doing it today, and every time I do it, I think about Elmore Leonard. Yates, as much as anybody, convinced me that if you can't have fun doing what you're doing, there's just no point in doing it. And I've tried to have fun every day of my life. I've tried to have some laughs. I was asked a couple of years ago by some guy who was writing a book about the secret of happiness, what the secret was, and I said the secret was to laugh every day. And if you were in a situation where you didn't get to laugh every day, it was time to move on, whether that situation was a marriage or a job. And thank God I've managed to follow my own advice pretty well all these years. But I admire what you're doing here. I think it's extremely valuable for our field. I think we do awfully good work. I think that the work we do is as valuable as or more valuable than what's happening in fashion magazines, what happens in literary magazines, what happens in a dozen different kinds of magazines that all receive great credit from the critics. And this is important work. We write about something that is absolutely fundamental to the life of modern people throughout the world, and we can't screw it up. We've got to be better at it every year. Every time we sit down and face the word processor, we've got to crank it up and do a better job than we did before. And if we do that, one day we'll get the recognition as a writing category and an editing category that we really deserve. Thanks for what you're doing here this evening. This is a huge thing for me and my family. It means a great, great deal to me.